Welcome to the Aber Valley Heritage Centre. You may be members of our community or perhaps from much further afield. You may be tracing your family links within this valley or just calling in to see how we are progressing. You are all most welcome. The Aber Valley Heritage Group, the Community Council and the Aber Valley Communities Partnership have worked closely together for many years to develop our Heritage Museum. After receiving Heritage Lottery funding in 2008, our dedicated volunteers, with the support of a part-time project officer, have worked very hard to furbish the room and collect donated artefacts, films, memorabilia and photographs to commemorate the rich heritage of the Aber Valley. Our volunteers, most of whom live within the valley, give their time to open the museum to the public from Mondays to Saturday, and to bring to life the many items on display, particularly those relating to the two universal colliery explosions in 1901 and 1913. Volunteers also help with the research, organising events, funding and promoting the museum. The Aber Valley consists of two villages, Abertrydow and Synghennydd, both with separate identities but closely linked due to the geography of the valley. Abertrydow was established as a village around the mid-1800s. Synghennydd was just a rural area occupied by several farms. The whole valley once belonged to the powerful family, the De Clares, and their entourage at Caerphilly Castle, and encircling Synghennydd are the remains of a medieval 13th century game park, which was well stocked with game and deer. Long lengths of the bank and ditch are still clearly visible today. The first shaft was sunk in Synghennydd in 1891 and king coal was discovered. A railway line was built to bring in the equipment and to take out the coal. This was followed in 1893 by a further shaft being sunk approximately 1 mile down the valley, and the Universal Colliery in Synghennydd and the Windsor Colliery in Abertrydow were in business. The coal hewn from our pits was the best steam coal, and it fed the furnaces of the ironworks and the boilers of the great British naval warships and the Merchant Navy. Thus began the huge expansion of the valley. Workers came from all parts of Wales and even over Offa's Dyke to labour in our pits. They were far better wages. Long strings of terraced houses were built to accommodate them. Public houses were erected to quench their thirsts, and chapels were built to save the souls. Social life was created. Football, rugby teams, eisteddfod, drama, choirs, all pastimes that did not use up the hard-earned money. Along the main road through Abertrydow and Synghennydd, shops and houses supplied all the needs and they did a roaring trade. But the first draught of sorrow did not take long to happen. In 1901 at the Universal Colliery, just before the end of the night shift, an explosion occurred and 81 men were killed. There was only one survivor, William Harries, whose descendants still live in the village today. The inquest into this disaster urged all mine owners to thoroughly water the roadways to prevent further explosions. This explosion did not affect the conscience of the coal owner, Lord Merthyr, and the mine was soon back in production. Then in 1911, a Coal Mine Act determined that the fans underground be reversed so that clean air could be provided. The valley continued expanding. Approximately 3,000 men were employed in the two mines, no shortage of jobs then. Life continued on as before. A new school was built in Synghennydd, more chapels and more public houses. The mine owners at the Universal had asked for a secured an extension until the 16th of September 1913 to put into action the demands of the 1911 Act, that was to reverse the air of the fans. They failed to meet this deadline. Then on the 14th of October, disaster struck once again. Just after 8 a.m. in the morning, 950 men descended to start their shift. A huge blast sent a 2-ton cage shooting up the Lancaster shaft from the bottom. The explosion and the fire, which was concentrated on the west side of the pit. The men on the east side were brought to the surface, but on the west side an inferno raged, and there was no adequate water supply to deal with it, nor was it possible to reverse the fans or to lessen the dangerous fumes. On Wednesday the 15th, hopes were raised when 18 men were found alive 1,200 yards from the pit bottom, but these were the last. On the 16th, all hope was abandoned, and the fires were ringed by sandbags. The death toll reached 440. This was 439 miners and 1 rescue worker. Many of these miners were boys as young as 14 years old. This terrible tragedy left 205 widows, 542 children, and 62 dependent parents. Several months later, the manager and owners were charged. The total fine was £24. And 4 years later, the owners were found guilty of failing to reverse the fans and were fined just £10. The cost of each miner's life worked out at 5.5 each. Many families left the valley to start life anew in other areas. Those that remained gradually came to terms with their grief, and life in the valley went on despite the loss of 65 men in the carnage of the First World War. The economic climates of the 20s give the first inkling of what was to come. In 1928, with no warning, the Universal Colliery closed with the loss of 1,800 jobs. Poverty and desolation crowded the valley, and a way of life disappeared. World War II took many more lives. Somehow, through all this, the resilience and bravery of our community showed through. Street parties, outings, Whitsun marches, carnivals, rugby, and other sports filled their lives. Even the closure of the Windsor Colliery in 1986 did not dampen their spirit. We are now all looking to the future. Much has been done by the community to make our valley a better place to live in. We have provided improved sports facilities, advanced community education, installed children's outdoor activities, and new schools. However, whilst we are all looking forward to a much brighter future, we will never forget the terrible shadows that have been cast over this valley, with the deaths in both explosions of the Universal and the high death toll during the working life of the Windsor. This totals 677 men, as well as the men that were killed in the World Wars. This is why we have all worked together to finally have this heritage centre, with its artefacts of the past, to ensure that these sacrifices and life as it was in those times will never be forgotten. We hope you will enjoy your visit. We are all volunteers, but we do our utmost to answer your queries as soon as possible. Thank you very much for being here today.